Hello, my name is Waylon Park. I'm 38 years old, and if you had asked me 10 years ago what my life would be like, I never would have dared to dream of today. A self-made millionaire, owner of one of the largest transportation companies in Phoenix, Arizona. But don't go thinking I'm some guy living in the clouds, flaunting his wealth. I'm just an ordinary man, raised in a middle-class family in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with dreams bigger than our backyard. And this story, it's not just about money or success. It's about family, trust, and the cracks I never thought would appear. I'm sitting here, in an armchair in my office overlooking the bustling streets of Phoenix, trying to piece together the memories. It all started with my father, Harlan Park, a truck driver with calloused hands and a warm smile. He was the one who inspired me, not with grand lessons, but by the way he lived, hardworking, patient, and always putting family first. I still remember those afternoons when he'd come home from long hauls, the smell of diesel clinging to his jacket, telling me and my younger brother Tanner about the endless roads he'd traveled. "One day, Waylon," he'd say, "you'll drive your own road. But don't forget, family is always the place to come back to." Speaking of family, I can't leave out my mother, the one who kept the warmth alive in our home. My mom, Ruth, is nearly 70 now, but she still radiates youth and vitality. She's the heart of our household. In her own way, she always made everything feel warm, from simple home-cooked meals to the tight hugs she gave me and Tanner when we came home from school. But if I'm being honest, I always felt like Mom had a soft spot for Tanner, my younger brother, who's 6 years my junior. Tanner was the golden child of the family, quick-witted, charming, and always knowing how to make people laugh. While I was the older son, learning to tie my shoes on my own, Tanner always had Mom holding his hand, guiding him step by step. I don't blame her, really. I love Tanner, of course I do. He's my brother, after all. But sometimes his carefree, almost oblivious attitude drives me up the wall, like the world owes him something. In those moments, I remind myself, that's just how he grew up. As the older brother, I've had to learn to be patient. I left Albuquerque at 18, went to college in Arizona, and worked part-time at a small transportation company to cover tuition. Those were the days of living in a rundown apartment, eating instant noodles and dreaming of building something big. My father was my guiding light. I wanted to make him proud, to prove that the Park blood didn't just drive trucks, it could own a fleet. And I did it. From a small company with 3 beat-up trucks, I built Park Logistics, a transportation empire with over 200 trucks, hauling goods across the Southwest. Money started rolling in, but I didn't let it blind me. I'm still Waylon, the kid who loved listening to Dad's stories, who loved the smell of Mom's morning coffee. Then I met Vanessa, the love of my life. She's an elementary school teacher with warm brown eyes and a smile that makes me forget even the most exhausting days. We got married after 3 years of dating, and then came our 3 kids, Zoe, our 12-year-old who's as smart as her mom, Abby, 9, with a mouth that never stops talking, and Jace, our 5-year-old youngest, who clings to my leg like a little puppy. They're my entire world. Every time I see Vanessa playing with the kids in the yard, my heart feels like it might burst with happiness. Last year, I decided to do something big, not just for myself, but for my whole family. I bought a beachfront mansion in California, a place I call my dream on the sand. The California mansion was a dream I'd held onto for years. I wanted a place where the family could come together, where the kids could run around on the beach, where Vanessa could sit by a window overlooking the ocean with a book, and where my parents could enjoy their later years in comfort. When I first brought Vanessa to see the house, she hugged me tightly, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Waylon, this isn't just a house. It's an entire world you've given us." I laughed, but deep down I knew I wasn't just doing this for my wife and kids. I wanted my parents to be proud. I wanted them to see that their eldest son, the one who was always seen as less charming than Tanner, had done something extraordinary. The mansion sits on a gentle hillside, with large glass windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Inside, there are 4 spacious bedrooms, a living room with a fireplace, and a kitchen that Vanessa says is too perfect to just cook pasta in. I spent hours picking out every piece of furniture, from the cream-colored leather sofa to the abstract paintings Zoe says look like her own artwork. I imagined family vacations here, beachside barbecues, evenings spent watching movies together. I even thought about inviting my parents and Tanner to stay whenever they wanted. To me, it was a way to give back, to keep the family close. I sent a spare key to Mom and said, "Mom, Dad, you can come here anytime. Think of it as our family's home." Mom beamed over the phone, and Dad said, "You've done well, Waylon." I thought everything was perfect. I thought I was building a dream not just for myself, but for my entire family. But life, like the roads my father used to drive, always has curves you can't see coming. And that curve hit me one summer day when I brought Vanessa and the kids to the mansion for our first vacation there. I could never have imagined that in the very house I poured my sweat and heart into building, I would feel the sting of betrayal from the people I loved most. I had told my wife and kids a month in advance that we'd be spending the summer at the new mansion I'd bought. Vanessa and the kids were thrilled every single day leading up to it. Zoe wanted to learn how to surf. Abby insisted on building the biggest sandcastle on the beach, and Jace just wanted to swim all day. Vanessa daydreamed about evenings on the porch, listening to the waves crash while sipping wine. Watching them, I felt like everything I'd done was worth it. The company, the sleepless nights, the long trips, all for the happiness of the people I loved. I thought I had everything in my grasp, a wonderful family, a successful career, and a home to bring us all together. That day, the drive from Phoenix to California was filled with laughter. Vanessa sat beside me, her hair gently blowing in the breeze as we rolled down the windows to catch the faint scent of sea salt. Zoe and Abby were in the back, bickering over who'd get the bedroom with the biggest window, while Jace dozed off, his little head resting against the seat, mouth slightly open as if dreaming of waves. I glanced at them through the rearview mirror, my heart swelling with joy. The mansion was waiting for us, my gift to them. And I could already picture us gathered by the pool, the sunset painting the ocean gold, laughter echoing through the house. But as we turned onto the road leading to the mansion, I felt a flicker of unease, though I couldn't put a name to it. The sleek black SUV parked in front of the gate wasn't the caretaker's. Loud music blared from inside, and the garage door was wide open, revealing a mess of kids' toys and scattered suitcases. Vanessa gripped my hand, her eyes tinged with worry. "Honey, are your parents here?" she asked, her voice trembling as if she, too, sensed something was off. I didn't answer, just quickened my pace toward the front door, my heart pounding. I'd called the caretaker ahead of time, made sure everything was ready. So what was going on? When I pushed open the door, it felt like someone had punched me in the chest. The living room, the one I'd painstakingly furnished with pillows and paintings to please Vanessa, was now a chaotic mess. Tanner, my younger brother, was sprawled on the sofa, feet propped up on the glass coffee table, a beer can in hand. His wife, Lisa, was scrolling on her phone in the corner, while their 2 kids ran wild, leaving dirty footprints on the white rug. My father, Harlan, sat in an armchair, watching TV with a blank expression. My mother, Ruth, stood up when she saw me, but her smile wasn't genuine. "Waylon," she said, her voice tinged with surprise but no trace of joy. "What are you doing here?" I stood frozen, feeling like the blood in my veins had stopped flowing. "What am I doing?" I repeated, my voice catching. "Mom, this is my house. I brought Vanessa and the kids here for a summer vacation." I looked around, searching for some sign that this was just a misunderstanding. But no. Suitcases were piled in the corner, snack wrappers littered the table, and the air reeked of beer. They were here, taking over my house, without so much as a word to me. Vanessa stood behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder as if trying to keep me calm. Zoe, Abby, and Jace peeked in from the doorway. their eyes a mix of curiosity and confusion. I forced a strained smile for the kids, not wanting them to see their dad losing control. But inside, I wanted to scream. My father gave a slight nod, as if my presence was an inconvenience. "Yeah, Waylon, we got here yesterday," he said. "Tanner wanted to take the kids somewhere fun, so we suggested they come here for a vacation." Tanner smirked, that same smug grin I'd seen since he was a kid, the one he flashed whenever he knew he'd beaten me at something. "Oh, Waylon, you're late," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "House is full. Why didn't you call ahead?" I stared at him, searching his eyes for a hint of remorse, a shred of respect. But there was none, just smug satisfaction. Tanner, the brother I'd carried on my shoulders, shared my toys with, protected, now sat in my house, talking to me like I was the outsider. I turned to Mom, hoping she'd say something to defuse the situation, but she just sighed and placed a hand on Tanner's shoulder. "Waylon, be understanding," she said. "Tanner doesn't get to take vacations often. He works hard and has 2 little ones. You're the older brother. Give him a break. There's no room left right now. Why don't you find somewhere else to stay for now? And we'll sort it out next time." It felt like a slap in the face. Find somewhere else? In the house I'd spent millions to buy? The house I'd dreamed would bring our family together? I looked at Dad, but he just shrugged, eyes still glued to the TV. Vanessa squeezed my hand, her gaze pleading. "Don't make a scene, honey." But I couldn't stop the fire raging in my chest. I took a step forward, ready to grab Tanner and throw him out. But then Jace ran up, wrapping his arms around my leg, looking up at me with wide, worried eyes. And I knew I couldn't do it, not in front of the kids, not to family. "Fine," I said, my voice ice cold. "We'll leave." I turned, pulling Vanessa and the kids out of the house. Tanner called after me, his voice still smug. "Hey, Waylon, book ahead next time, yeah?" I didn't look back. I didn't want him to see my eyes, red with anger and disappointment. Back in the car, Vanessa hugged me from the passenger seat. "I'm so sorry, honey," she whispered. "I didn't expect this." I held her hand, forcing a smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm the one who's sorry. I'll find us another place. The kids will still have a great vacation." But deep down, I knew I was lying. Okay? How could it be okay when my own family, the people I loved most, had just pushed me out of my own dream? I drove away from the mansion, my heart heavy. Zoe asked from the back, "Dad, why aren't we staying?" I liked that house. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "We're letting Uncle Tanner borrow it for a few days, sweetheart. We'll find somewhere even nicer." But Abby, my sensitive girl, looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Are you mad, Dad?" she asked in a small voice. I shook my head, but my heart felt like it was being crushed. I wasn't just mad. I felt betrayed. Eventually, I found a resort a few miles away, a luxurious hotel with a private beach and a large pool. The kids squealed when they saw the hotel room, and Vanessa quickly turned the mood around by ordering a pizza party right in the suite. I tried to join in, laughing with Jace as he bounced on the bed, helping Zoe find surfing tutorial videos on her phone, and hugging Abby as she talked about the sandcastle she wanted to build. But every time I looked out the window at the glowing red sunset, I thought of the mansion, the house that was supposed to be ours, now occupied by people who didn't respect me. That night, after the kids were asleep, Vanessa sat beside me on the hotel balcony, a glass of wine in her hand. "I know you're upset," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But you can't let this ruin the kids' vacation. And you can't let them keep treating you like this." I looked at her, those brown eyes always my refuge. "You're right," I whispered. "But you know what hurts the most? It's not Tanner. It's my parents. They chose him. They stood by him even though it's my house." Vanessa placed her hand on my chest, as if to soothe the pain I couldn't put into words. "You're the best man I know, Waylon. But sometimes your kindness gets taken advantage of. Don't let them keep hurting you." I nodded, but inside I knew I couldn't let this slide. Not because of the house, but because of my self-respect. The rest of the vacation, I did my best to make it memorable. I took the kids surfing, built sandcastles with Abby, and even stole a moonlight kiss with Vanessa after the kids were asleep. But every night, lying in the hotel bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Tanner's mocking smile, about the way Mom looked at me like I was the intruder. I knew I had to do something, not out of revenge, but to reclaim what was mine, not just the house, but the respect I deserved. When the vacation ended and we returned to Phoenix, I was different. The fire in me wasn't raging anger anymore. It was a quiet, steely resolve. I wouldn't let my family, Vanessa, Zoe, Abby, Jace, suffer this injustice. And I would make Tanner and my parents understand that they couldn't treat me like an outsider in my own dream. The first few days back in Phoenix, I tried to focus on work. Park Logistics was in the middle of its peak season, and I was swamped with new transportation contracts. But every time I sat in my office, looking out at the bustling streets of Phoenix, the image of Tanner sprawled on the sofa in my mansion flashed in my mind, accompanied by his mocking grin. "Book ahead next time, yeah?" His words echoed in my head, like a knife slicing into my self-respect. Vanessa could tell I was wrestling with something inside. One evening after the kids were asleep, she pulled me out onto the balcony, handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Honey, I know what you're thinking. But don't let this eat you up. If you're going to do something, do it, but do it in a way you won't regret." She was right. I couldn't just sit there, letting this injustice gnaw at me. I needed to know exactly what was happening at the mansion. If Tanner and my family thought they could freely use my property as their own, I needed proof. I contacted a security company in California and asked them to install a surveillance camera system throughout the house, in the living room, kitchen, hallways, and pool area. I didn't want to invade anyone's privacy, so I instructed them to only place cameras in common areas, not in bedrooms or bathrooms. The technician, a young guy named Mike, nodded understandingly. "Boss, we'll do it quick and discreet. No one will know the cameras are running." I thanked him, but my heart still felt heavy. I didn't want to be the guy spying on his own family, but I was left with no other choice. The camera system was up and running within 3 days. I downloaded the surveillance app to my phone, and the first time I opened it, I felt like I was stepping into another world. The footage from the mansion was crystal clear. The living room was still stunning, but now littered with empty beer bottles and pizza crusts. A few weeks after the cameras were installed, I discovered a truth that left me stunned. Tanner wasn't just staying at the mansion for a few days, as my mom had claimed. He had turned it into his personal playground. He was throwing lavish parties, inviting a ton of friends over. I saw unfamiliar faces eating, dancing, and even filming lifestyle videos by the pool, acting like they owned the place. One clip showed Tanner standing on the balcony holding a glass of wine, laughing loudly and pointing out at the ocean. I gripped my phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. Worse, I found out Tanner and his friends had no respect for the house. A crystal chandelier in the dining room was broken. The white rug in the living room was stained with dirt, and a glass door by the pool area was cracked. I watched the footage over and over, each minute making me feel like more of a fool. I had bought this house to bring my family together, but Tanner had turned it into a cheap nightclub, and my parents, the people I respected most, hadn't said a word to stop him. I called my mom, hoping for an explanation. "Mom, Tanner's destroying my property. I've seen him throwing parties nonstop. Did you know about this?" Her voice came through the line, still gentle but with a defensive edge. "Waylon, don't make a big deal out of it. Tanner's just having a little fun. He needs a space to unwind. You're the older brother. Be understanding." I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to yell. Understanding? Understanding that my younger brother was brazenly taking over my property, damaging it, and treating me like I was invisible. I hung up, not wanting to argue, but deep down, I knew I couldn't forgive this. That night I sat in my home office, staring at the phone screen with the camera footage. Vanessa walked in and placed a hand on my shoulder. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I told her everything: the parties, the damage, Tanner's audacity. Vanessa shook her head, a rare spark of anger flashing in her eyes. "Waylon, I told you. You're too good to them and they're taking advantage of it. You have to do something, not for revenge, but to protect what's ours." She was right. I didn't want to be petty, but I also couldn't let Tanner keep treating me like a joke. I decided to teach my younger brother a lesson, not with violence or destruction, but by humiliating him, making him remember that the house wasn't his. I wanted Tanner to feel the shame I felt when I was pushed out of my own home. I started planning, through a friend in the event industry. I contacted a company specializing in high-tech performances, the kind that could turn an ordinary party into an unforgettable experience. I met them at a cafe in Phoenix and explained my idea. "I want to pull a prank at my mansion," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Nothing destructive, nothing illegal. Just something to spook the people there a little and make them understand they can't misuse my property." The manager, a woman named Carla with fiery red hair and a mischievous smile, nodded. "I get it, Mr. Park. We can set up a sound, lighting, and projection system to create a haunted house effect. Flickering lights, eerie voices, shadowy figures on the walls, enough to scare them but not cause harm. Want to add a specific message?" I thought for a moment and said, "I want a voice to say something like, 'Intruders detected. Stay away from property that isn't yours.' Subtle but creepy enough to stick with them." Carla laughed. "I like how you think. We'll make it perfect." Within a week, her team went to the mansion and set up the system as requested. They installed hidden speakers in the walls, compact projectors on the ceiling, and smart lights that could be controlled remotely. Everything was connected to an app on my phone, allowing me to trigger the performance whenever I wanted. When it was all set up, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I wanted Tanner to understand he couldn't keep acting so irresponsibly. I waited for the perfect opportunity, and it came sooner than I expected. Tanner was heading to the mansion that weekend, and my parents mentioned he was planning to bring his boss and some important business partners to show off and discuss contracts. This was my moment. I knew Tanner wouldn't be able to handle the embarrassment in front of people he wanted to impress, and I'd make sure he never forgot this lesson. I'd make him remember that the house didn't belong to him and that I, Waylon Park, wasn't someone he could disrespect. Sitting in my Phoenix office, I checked the surveillance app on my phone one last time. The camera system and high-tech equipment I'd hired Carla and her team to install were ready. Every hidden speaker, every projector, every smart light had been thoroughly tested. I could vividly imagine Tanner strutting into the mansion with his important guests, head held high, bragging about the million-dollar property he didn't even own. But this time I'd be the one calling the shots. Not Tanner, not my parents, me. Vanessa knew I was gearing up for something big. The night before, she sat beside me on the couch, her hand tightly clasped in mine. "Are you sure about this, Waylon?" she asked, her voice laced with concern but brimming with support. "I don't want you to do something you'll regret." I squeezed her hand and smiled. "I promise. I'm not out to destroy anyone. Just a little lesson. Tanner needs to know his limits." Vanessa nodded, but her brown eyes still held a flicker of unease. I knew she was worried for me, worried I'd let my anger take me too far. But I was resolute. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. The weekend came faster than I expected. Through the cameras, I saw Tanner and his family arrive at the mansion on Friday morning. He pulled up in his sleek black SUV, carrying his wife, their 2 kids, and a group of people I assumed were his boss and business partners. They walked in, laughing and chatting, suitcases clattering on the marble floor. Tanner, as usual, led the way, pointing out the infinity pool, the ocean view, the kitchen I'd designed specifically for Vanessa. I sat in front of my laptop in Phoenix, hundreds of miles away, feeling like a director preparing for the most critical scene of my film. Tanner's group consisted of 4 middle-aged men in sharp suits and a woman in an expensive business dress. I caught snippets through the hidden microphone in the living room as Tanner boasted, "This is where I bring the family to unwind. Best view in California. Make yourselves at home. Tonight we're having a poolside party." One man, likely Tanner's boss, nodded approvingly. "Tanner, you sure know how to pick a spot. If this deal goes through, you've got a bright future ahead." Tanner let out that smug laugh I'd heard too many times. I gripped the computer mouse, my fingers itching to activate the system right then. But not yet. I needed the perfect moment. All day I watched them through the cameras. Tanner and his partners strolled along the beach, sipped wine in the living room, and even hosted an outdoor lunch with lobster and champagne. Lisa, Tanner's wife, was busy snapping photos, posting them on social media with captions like, "Paradise found." Their 2 kids ran wild through the house, leaving dirty footprints on the rug and spilling juice on the sofa. I clenched my jaw, suppressing my anger. "Just wait, Tanner," I muttered. "Your paradise is about to crumble." Night fell, and they threw their poolside party. The outdoor lights glowed brightly. Jazz music played through the speakers, and Tanner stood at the center of the crowd, wine glass in hand, cracking jokes as if he owned the world. His boss, a tall man with silver hair, clapped him on the shoulder, laughing heartily. The other partners nodded, clearly impressed by the mansion's grandeur. I glanced at the clock. 9 p.m. It was time. I opened the app on my phone, checking the system one last time. Everything was working perfectly. I took a deep breath, my finger hovering over the activate button. Vanessa walked in, standing behind me, her hand on my shoulder. "Do it," she whispered, "but be careful." I nodded and pressed the button. The performance began. On the screen, I saw the lights in the mansion flicker erratically. The poolside lamps flashed chaotically, shifting from white to red before cutting out entirely, plunging the area into darkness. The jazz music was interrupted by an eerie sound, a low, whistling hum, like wind rushing through a crack, mixed with ghostly whispers. Tanner froze mid-sentence, looking around in confusion. What was that? The guests started murmuring, some standing up from their chairs. Then the voice boomed, cold and chilling, echoing from the hidden speakers throughout the house. "Intruders detected. Stay away from property that isn't yours." I'd asked Carla to record the line in a low, authoritative female voice, both commanding and terrifying, as if the house itself were speaking. On the screen, Tanner flinched, dropping his wine glass to the ground. Lisa screamed, clutching their 2 frightened kids. The partners exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to fear. But I wasn't done. The ceiling projectors kicked in, casting shadowy, ghostly figures on the walls, shapes that looked like people drifting by. Sometimes a handprint starkly outlined on the glass. The lights in the house flickered faster, mimicking an electrical storm. "Leave this place immediately," the voice continued, louder now, reverberating through the mansion. "This is not your place." The guests descended into real panic. The woman in the business dress knocked over a chair as she scrambled to her feet, shouting, "What kind of game is this, Tanner?" His boss, face red with anger, barked, "You said this was your house? What's going on here?" Tanner stammered, trying to explain. I don't know, it's probably just the electrical system." But no one was listening. One of the men in the group was already grabbing his things, muttering about not doing business with someone who can't even control his own house. I sat in front of the screen, heart pounding, but not from anxiety. I felt a strange satisfaction, like I'd reclaimed something that was mine. Tanner ran around the house, frantically searching for the light switches, but my system had locked everything down. The lights kept flickering, the shadowy figures glided across the walls, and the voice repeated relentlessly, "Intruders. Leave. Now." Within 20 minutes, the entire group had packed up and rushed to their cars. One of Tanner's partners, the one he'd been trying to impress, turned back and snapped, "You've wasted my time, Tanner. Don't expect this deal to go through." They sped off into the night, their taillights fading down the road leading away from the mansion. Tanner stood at the gate, staring after them, his face pale. Lisa, clutching their crying kids, was sobbing, while Tanner pulled out his phone and dialed my number. My phone buzzed, the screen flashing Tanner. I stared at it, feeling like the world was slowing down. I could have answered, could have yelled at him, told him he deserved it. But I didn't. I let the phone ring, letting Tanner face the consequences on his own. I'd done enough. The lesson had been taught. When the camera feed showed the mansion empty, I turned off the system. The lights returned to normal. The voice fell silent, and the shadows vanished. Vanessa sat beside me, letting out a sigh. "You did it," she said, her voice a mix of relief and lingering concern. "What now?" I looked at her and smiled. "Now we wait and see what Tanner does next. But I'm pretty sure he won't dare step foot in that house again." That night I lay in bed, unable to sleep, but not from stress. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Tanner had gotten his lesson, but I knew this was just the beginning. I knew Tanner would call our parents and tell them what happened. Sooner or later they'd call me and I'd have to face them. The familiar scolding, the heavy sighs would come, just like they did when Tanner and I fought as kids. But this time, I wasn't the young Waylon who backed down to keep the peace. I was a man who had built an empire from nothing, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even my own blood, make me feel like an outsider. The next morning I woke to sunlight streaming through the office curtains in Phoenix. Vanessa had already brewed coffee, setting it on my desk with a gentle smile. "You okay?" she asked, her hand brushing my shoulder. I nodded, pulling her into my arms. "I'm fine, sweetheart, really. For the first time in weeks, I feel like I'm doing the right thing." Vanessa smiled, but her eyes still held a trace of worry. "Your parents are going to call, Waylon. I know they won't let this go easily." I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I know, but this time I'm not apologizing." Sure enough, my phone buzzed at noon. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what was coming. "Waylon," her voice came through, no longer warm but laced with tension. "What did you do to Tanner? He just called me, saying you ruined his party and cost him his job. How could you be so heartless?" I sat back in my chair, staring out the window, keeping my voice calm. "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong. Tanner brought this on himself. He took over my house, threw parties, damaged my property, and acted like it was his. I just reminded him it's not." Mom was silent for a moment, then let out that sigh I'd heard 1,000 times, the one that said I was the stubborn son who didn't get it. "Waylon, Tanner's your brother. He doesn't have the opportunities you do. You're successful, you have your company, you have money. Tanner just wanted to have some fun. Can't you let him have this one thing?" Her words cut like a knife, not because they were sharp, but because they were so familiar. For years I'd been the one to give in, the successful one who had to sacrifice. But not this time. "Mom," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I ever thought it could be. "I bought that house with my money, my sweat, my heart. I shared it because I thought we were family, but if I'm treated like an outsider, don't expect me to keep acting like family." The words poured out, strong and clear, as if they'd been bottled up for too long. Mom went quiet on the other end, and I could picture her frowning, clutching the phone. "Waylon, what are you saying? Are you cutting ties with your family?" Her voice trembled, but I didn't waver. "I'm not cutting ties, Mom, but I'm done letting anyone take advantage of me." I hung up, my heart pounding, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't have to apologize, didn't have to bow my head to please anyone. Vanessa, standing in the doorway, looked at me with a mix of surprise and pride. "You just did what I've always wanted you to do," she said, stepping forward to hug me. "You stood up for yourself." I pulled her close, feeling her warmth, and knew that even if the world turned its back on me, I still had my real family. Vanessa, Zoe, Abby, and Jace. A few days later, I heard through a mutual friend that Tanner had been fired. The big deal he was trying to close fell apart, not just because of the botched party, but because his boss lost faith in his professionalism. He said it was his house. Then that haunted nonsense happened. My friend relayed his boss's words. Who'd do business with someone who can't even control his own place? I wasn't surprised, but I didn't feel joy either. Tanner had dug his own grave, and I was just the one who gave him a nudge. Dad called that evening, his voice low and heavy, a stark contrast to his usual indifference. Waylon, you went too far. Tanner lost his job and now he's struggling. You're the older brother. You should have helped him, not pushed him into a corner. I listened, but the guilt I used to feel was gone. Dad, I've helped Tanner enough. I shared the house. I gave in time and time again. But he didn't respect me, and neither did you or Mom. I did what I had to do to protect my family, Vanessa and the kids. Dad sighed, but said nothing more. I knew he was disappointed, but I also knew he understood I wasn't the obedient kid anymore. In the days that followed, I didn't hear from Tanner or my parents again. Part of me felt empty, like I'd lost a piece of my family. But a bigger part felt free. I had stood up for myself, for Vanessa, for my kids. I had no regrets. The mansion, with all its dazzling beauty, was now just a reminder of the cracks in the family I once thought unbreakable. I started thinking about the future. The mansion, though it was my dream, had become a source of injustice. I didn't want to keep it anymore. Didn't want a place where every brick reminded me of betrayal. The decision to sell the mansion came to me like a cool breeze after a storm. I didn't want to keep a place where every corner, every brick reminded me of betrayal. That house had once been my dream, but now it was just a painful reminder of the cracks in the family I once thought unbreakable. I called the real estate agent, my voice steadier than ever. Sell it, I said. I want it out of my life as soon as possible. The agent, a middle-aged man with a calm, steady voice, hesitated. Mr. Park, this is an incredible property. You could make millions, are you sure? I smiled over the phone, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. I'm sure. I don't need it anymore. The sale process moved faster than I expected. A wealthy family from San Francisco bought the mansion for more than I'd anticipated. As I signed the papers, I felt no regret. I looked at Vanessa, sitting beside me in the notary's office, and she squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with support. You did the right thing, she whispered. We'll start fresh, Waylon. A new place just for us. I squeezed her hand back, knowing that she and the kids, Zoe, Abby, and Jace, were my true family, the ones who never made me feel like an outsider. I cut off all access to the mansion for my family before the sale. I changed the locks, revoked my parents' and Tanner's access to the security system, and instructed the caretaker not to let any of them set foot in the house. I didn't tell them about it. I didn't need to explain. They had chosen how to treat me, and now I was choosing to protect what was mine. After selling the mansion, I started looking for a new place, not to show off, not to bring anyone together except Vanessa and the kids. I wanted a private sanctuary, a place we could truly call home, untouched by those who didn't respect us. Through a friend, I found a villa in Malibu, smaller than the old mansion but more beautiful, more refined. It sat on a hillside, with glass walls overlooking the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by lush green trees, secluded from the noise of the world. The pool was smaller but big enough for Jace to splash around in. The living room was cozy with a fireplace, just as Vanessa had dreamed. Most importantly, it was ours alone. The day we visited the new villa, the kids ran through it, screaming with excitement. Zoe claimed the room with the ocean view window, declaring it her private art studio. Abby tugged at my hand, begging me to help her build a reading nook with piles of pillows. Jace, of course, just wanted to jump into the pool even though the air was chilly. Vanessa stood on the balcony, gazing out at the ocean, her hair gently swaying in the sea breeze. I walked up and wrapped my arms around her from behind. "I love this place," she said softly. "It feels like a fresh start." I kissed her hair, feeling her warmth, and knew this was where we belonged. Our first vacation at the new villa was unforgettable. No loud parties, no strangers' faces, just us, my real family. We built sandcastles on the beach, laughing as the waves washed them away. I tried teaching Zoe to surf, though we both fell more times than we stood. Abby sat with Vanessa, reading under a shaded umbrella, while Jace splashed in the pool, shrieking every time I pretended to be a sea monster chasing him. In the evenings, we gathered around the fireplace, eating pizza and telling stories, our laughter filling the warm space. For the first time in months, I felt at peace, like every piece of my life had finally found its place. I didn't tell my parents or Tanner about the new villa. I didn't want them to know, not because I hated them, but because I'd learned a hard lesson. Family, without respect, is just an empty shell. I'd spent my life trying to please my family, to be the dutiful son, the forgiving older brother. But now I chose Vanessa and the kids, the ones who stood by me, who always valued me. One early morning, I stood on the balcony of the new villa, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, watching the ocean sparkle under the rising sun. The waves lapped gently against the shore, carrying the salty scent I'd loved since I was a kid, when my father told stories of his highway journeys. But now I didn't look at the sea with a burning need to prove myself. I looked at it with relief, with peace, as if I'd rediscovered myself after a long journey. Vanessa stepped out, wrapping her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice as gentle as the waves. I smiled, pulling her close. "I'm thinking I've finally found the right path. At last." She laughed, resting her head on my shoulder. And we stood there, silently watching the sunrise, feeling a tranquility I once thought I'd never reclaim. The kids were still asleep inside, and I knew when they woke, the villa would come alive with laughter and chaos. Zoe would beg me to take her surfing, Abby would ramble about the new book she was reading, and Jace would drag me to the pool for another round of sea monster. This was my family, the ones I'd do anything to protect, to make happy. And I knew I didn't need anyone else to feel complete. I thought about Tanner, about my parents, about the years I believed family was everything. But I was wrong. Family isn't just blood, isn't just the people you grew up with. Family is the ones who respect you, who don't exploit your kindness, who don't see you as a tool to get what they want. Tanner chose to treat me like an outsider, and my parents, though I loved them, chose to stand by him. I didn't hate them. I just regretted that they didn't understand the value of respect. I didn't act out of revenge to destroy my family. I just wanted them to understand, if they didn't respect me, they couldn't expect to stay close to me. The mansion was sold, and with it went the memories of betrayal. This new villa, though smaller, more private, was where I'd build my future, not for my parents, not for Tanner, but for Vanessa, Zoe, Abby, and Jace. They were the ones who deserved it, and I'd spend my life protecting them. Standing on the balcony, I sipped my coffee, the gentle bitterness lingering on my tongue. The sea breeze swept through, carrying the ocean's whisper as if it were telling me everything would be okay. And I believed it. I had found my path, not the one my father drove, not the one my mother wanted for me, but the one I chose, the one that led me to the people who truly loved me.